welcome to the Target UPSC Prelims 2024 Current Affairs series, and this is the fourth episode of Environment and Geography. So let's begin. And the first topic that we will be discussing today is the Kakhovka Dam. So the explosion has occurred inside the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. So there is a dam and there is a hydroelectric power plant also, due to which there was a crack in the dam and a huge amount of water flowed outside. So see, there is a Kakhovka dam and it is also a hydroelectric power plant. So because of the crack in the dam, because of the hydroelectric power plant, the crack in the dam took place and the huge amount of water flowed outside, because of which. So the attack of Ukraine and Russia, the war between Ukraine and Russia which is presently going on, is being considered as the reason for it. And the Kakhovka Dam is a major hydroelectric plant and a large reservoir built on the Dnieper river in Ukraine. So the river on which Kakhovka Dam is situated is the Dnieper river and it is present in Ukraine. Now about the dam. So the water holding capacity is around 18 cubic kilometers, and with the help of this dam, water was also supplied to the Crimean Peninsula, and Crimean Peninsula was also captured by Russia in the year 2014. And the same dam was also supplied water to the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. That is why the importance of the dam also increases, because it supplies water to the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and this is one of the international places which as of now remains in news. So this is also situated in Ukraine on the Dnieper river, so it becomes very important for you to remember. And if we talk about you, so this is the map of Ukraine and this is the Dnieper river, this is the Crimean Peninsula, this is Ukraine, and this is the location where the Kakhovka Dam is situated. Now second comes the topic of Orkney Islands. Orkney Islands. So the Orkney Islands have announced their intention to secede from the United Kingdom and become a self-governing territory of Norway. So there is the Orkney Island, and Orkney Island is situated to the north of Scotland. So this is the location of Orkney Island. See, this is England, and with Wales and Scotland it becomes UK. This is Scotland, and to the north of Scotland lies the Orkney Islands. So now the Orkney Islands want to be a self-governing entity or territory of Norway, and they want to come out of the United Kingdom. And it is a group of around 70 small islands. Of these, 20 islands are inhabited by humans. Then 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites are located in under the Orkney Islands, and first is the Skara Bay, and that is, this is the location of Skara Bay. This is the map of Orkney Islands and this is the location of Skara Bay. Then comes the ring of Brodgar. So ring of Brodgar is this location. Then comes the standing stones of Stennis. This is the location of standing stone of Stennis. And then the Mishove Chambered Tomb. So this is the Mishove Chambered Tomb. So they are close, these three are close, and Skara Break are little far away. Then comes the topic of Anthropocene epoch. So when we talk about the Anthropocene epoch, so recently the scientists have discovered evidence of the beginning of the Anthropocene era. So the beginning of the Anthropocene era, scientists have found the evidence of it, and it was discovered by studying sediments in Crawford Lake in Canada. And if we talk about the Crawford Lake, so it is a meromictic lake where the water layers do not mix. So meromictic lake, it means that the water layers, the different layers of water, they do not mix with each other. Important point. At the same time, its sediment layers preserve the annual effects of human activities on the Earth's climate. So the Crawford Lake as of now is a meromictic lake. Then the Anthropocene epoch is a proposed era that reflects the current geological time interval. So as of now, it says that the current geological time interval, which also relates with the climate change which is as of now going on, that is what is supposed to come into the Anthropocene epoch. So is a proposed era that reflects the current geologic time interval, the current geological time interval. So scientists believe that the Anthropocene era began in the 1950s and since then it has been going on. In this era there have been radical changes. So there have been some major changes in the Earth's ecosystem due to the human activities. And human activity means that the industrial revolution, because of which the increase of temperature, global warming, climate change. Then there are many events are associated with this era. So these include global warming, sea level rise because of global warming and glaciers melting. Then ocean acidification, massive soil erosion, deadly heat wave, etc. So everything as of now is related to the changing environment of the Earth. And the term Anthropocene was first used in 2000 by the Nobel Prize winning chemist Paul Crutzen and biology professor Eugene Stormer. Then there is a disagreement among experts regarding the Anthropocene era, because many believe that the initiation of the Anthropocene era, the timing of the Anthropocene era is different, and many scientists believe that the disagreement is basically related to the starting of the Anthropocene era. And many experts believe that there is not enough evidence to prove its origin. Then Earth's geological time scale is divided into 5 broad categories, and the 5 broad categories are eons, era, periods, epoch and ages. So these are the 5 different broad categories. Then comes the next topic, and that is the solar flare. So when we talk about solar flare, it becomes obvious to know that this is related to sun. So the solar flare phenomena have been observed in the United States, and with United States in the Pacific Ocean also, with X-class solar flares causing radio blackouts in parts of these areas. So because of the solar flares, the radio frequency or the radio waves disruption took place, because of which the radio blackouts also took place. Now classification of the solar flares: the least powerful solar flare is A, while the most powerful solar flare are B, C, M and X. So the strength of the solar flare is different. Least is A, most is X. So if we talk about the solar flare A, so it is hardly detectable and does not cause any harm. B, so it is also not strong enough. Then comes C, less powerful solar flare. Then comes solar flare M, so it can cause short-term radio blackouts affecting Earth's polar regions. Then comes the solar flare X, and it is the strongest. So among all the solar flares, strongest is X and least is A. It could trigger radio blackouts and long-lasting radiation storms across the entire Earth. See, if the solar flare will be more and the strength of the solar flare will be more from the sun, then the radio frequency or the radio waves, which are because on the basis of which all the communication systems are also working, so they will also see some kind of disruption taking place. Then each letter above represents 10 times the energy output of its previous letter, 10 times. Then what are solar flares? So solar flares are huge explosions that occur on the sun. So on the surface of the sun, the huge explosions that take place, those are called solar flare, and they are very powerful in nature. And because of the huge explosions that took place, it releases energy. So energy gets released, energy, light and high speed particles into the space. Then these flares are often associated with solar magnetic storms. So when the huge explosion took place, solar magnetic storms also come out. These storms are called coronal mass ejection. So the term, whenever you hear the term corona, the outer layer, so always, even if you hear the term corona and you read the term corona, very specifically look for the things in which the solar flare or the sun's involvement is there. This phenomena occurs when energy stored in twisted magnetic fields is suddenly released. So the energy suddenly gets released. Then next comes the Panama Canal. So Panama Canal is a canal which connects the North America with the South America, and it is a narrow thin area which connects the North America with the South America continent. And this is also very important from the perspective of sea lane traffic, because a lot of traffic passes through it as it connects the Pacific Ocean with the Atlantic Ocean. So navigation has been disrupted in the drought hit Panama Canal. So the Panama Canal as of now is going through a prolonged period of drought, because of which the movement of ships from the Panama Canal is getting disrupted. So Panama Canal is a man-made waterway. It is not a natural waterway, it is a man-made waterway, and it connects the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. So it is like, if this is Panama Canal, this is North America, this is South America, this is Pacific Ocean, this is Atlantic Ocean. So Panama Canal connects the Pacific Ocean with the Atlantic Ocean. This saves ships from the long and dangerous voyage. So see, if this is South America, this is Panama Canal, this is Panama Canal, and this is North America. So if the ship passes through the Panama Canal, they do not have to pass through the long distance of covering the whole of South America. So they can pass through the Panama Canal from one part to the other part. So this saves a lot of time for the ships and a lot of energy and fuel also. So the Panama Canal provides connectivity to approximately 2000 ports in 170 countries, and basically with regard to Europe, Africa, North America, South America. Then Panama is an isthmus, and this isthmus connects the North and South America. So isthmus is referred to a term when from both the side it connects to water body. So an isthmus is a narrow strip of land, and the strip connects to large land masses. So this strip connects to large land masses, not water body, it connects to large land masses. Water bodies is when it forms a strait. So isthmus is a narrow strip of land, and this strip connects two large land masses, that is North America and South America. Then if isthmus is when two land masses are connected, and when two water bodies are connected, then it is called a strait. Then strait example can be the Strait of Gibraltar, which connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Atlantic Ocean, and the isthmus can be the Isthmus of Suez. Then the strategic importance of Panama Canal. So the importance of Panama Canal is not limited to economic benefits only. It also facilitates national security, defense capabilities, and logistics flexibility in the region. The United States is the biggest beneficiary of it, because the ships passes through the area very quickly. The role of straits and isthmus in global trade, one of the important one, or the trade being the Suez Canal. As Suez Canal, about 12% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal, and then there is also Malacca Strait, then there is Panama Canal. Then next topic comes the Sulina Channel. Sulina Channel. So the Sulina Channel is a tributary of the Danube River. So if we talk about the Danube River, so this is Ukraine and this is the Danube River. So the Sulina Channel, it connects major ports of Ukraine with the Black Sea. So this is Ukraine, this is Black Sea, and because of the Sulina Channel, major ports of Ukraine gets connected to the Black Sea. Then Chilia, Sulina and St. George are the major channels in the Danube Delta. River is Danube Sea because Ukraine is very much in news. Because Ukraine is very much in news, so the rivers present in Ukraine and all the important places which are present on those rivers become very important for you to remember, because the question can be asked in the prelims with regard to the places in news, and we do see that in the last few years these kind of questions has been asked. And of these three, only the Sulina channel is deep and wide enough to transport goods, because for the transport of goods, for the ships to come to that port, the port has to be deep, the water body has to be deep, because if it will not be deep enough, then the big ships will not be able to come to the port. Then it belongs entirely to Romania, and which is a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it belongs to Romania, and Romania is a member of NATO. Then the Danube Delta offers Ukraine an alternative route after Russia withdrew from the Black Sea Grain Agreement. So Black Sea Grain Agreement was also very much in news when the Russia-Ukraine war was going on. Because of the Russia-Ukraine war, so the world supply chain was disrupted, and the import-export of wheat and oil seeds was also disrupted, because of which the grain agreement took place. Then comes Danube River. So Danube is the second longest river in Europe after Volga. So Volga is the longest river of Europe, and Danube is the second longest river of Europe, and it is located in Central and Eastern Europe, flowing through 10 countries. So Danube River, you can say that it does not only flow through Ukraine, it flows through around 10 countries, and then it opens into the Black Sea. So the river originates in the Black Forest of Germany. So Danube River originates in Germany and flows through Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova and Ukraine, and then finally it falls into the Black Sea, and it is known as the most biodiverse area in Europe, second largest river after Volga. Then next come the Siang River. So recently the government of India has proposed to build a barrage on the Siang River. So Siang River, a barrage would be built, and the purpose of this barrage is to reduce the threat posed by the dam being built by China on the Tsangpo River. So Tsangpo River, China, which the dam which will be built will pose a challenge. And China is building a huge hydroelectric project on the Great Bend of the Yarlung Tsangpo River. And this Yarlung Tsangpo River, when it comes and enters India, it is known as the Brahmaputra River. But till the time it is flowing in China or the Tibetan region, it is known as the Yarlung Tsangpo River. And this river enters Arunachal Pradesh of India from Great Bend itself. So it enters into the Arunachal Pradesh, and Yarlung Tsangpo River originates near Lake Mansarovar. So the origin point is Lake Mansarovar. So it originates from the Lake Mansarovar, then it passes through the Tibetan region, then from the Arunachal Pradesh it passes into India, and this is known as the Brahmaputra River, which ultimately passes into the Bay of Bengal. And the Namcha then turns southeast near the Barwa Peak and enters India in Arunachal Pradesh, where the river is known as Siang. So what happens is, when the Yarlung Tsangpo rivers enter from the Namcha Barwa in Arunachal Pradesh, it is named Siang, and it is also named Brahmaputra. And Siang River flows down from the Himalayan region in Arunachal Pradesh and enters the Assam Valley, where it has many tributaries also. And after this it joins Lohit and Dibang rivers to form the Brahmaputra. Then next come the Kilauea volcano. The Kilauea volcano. So recently the Kilauea volcano in the United States of America of Hawaii has been erupting again. So the location of the Kilauea volcano is in US Hawaii district, or you can say the Hawaii state, and the country is United States of America. So Kilauea volcano is also called Mount Kilauea volcano, and it has recently been seen erupting again. And this is the most active volcano in the world. Most active volcano in the world. Location US Hawaii. And Hawaii is a place, you can say that, which is famous for its volcanic eruptions. It is located on the Hawaiian Islands, located in the southeastern part of the United States. So this is Pacific Ocean and Hawaiian Islands are located there, and this is the location of the Kilauea volcano on Hawaiian Islands. A volcano is a hole or opening in the crust. So earth has three parts, that is core, mantle and crust. So it is the opening in the crust, like for example, so from this, when it erupts, the lava comes out, through which molten rock, hot rock fragments and other hot gases come out during an eruption. Then comes the next topic, and this is the Nagorno-Karabakh region. So this topic also very much remains in news. And the Nagorno-Karabakh region, if you will look at the map, then this is the map of the Caucasus region. So this is Azerbaijan, this is Armenia, and the Nagorno-Karabakh region is a conflicting or a disputed region between Armenia and Azerbaijan, even though it lies in the area of Azerbaijan, but the population which remains or which stays in Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Armenia. So there is a problem. So Azerbaijan has launched an anti-terrorism military operation in Nagorno-Karabakh, and this operation was preceded by Azerbaijan closing the Lachin corridor. So Azerbaijan has closed the Lachin corridor, and Lachin corridor is the corridor through which the Nagorno-Karabakh region connects with the Armenia. So Azerbaijan closing the Lachin corridor in the region in December 2022, and because of which there was severe shortage of essential food items or essential things in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, and because of which the civilian population which was living in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, they suffered a lot. And the Lachin corridor is a 5-kilometer long corridor connecting the Nagorno-Karabakh conclave to Armenia. About the Nagorno-Karabakh, so Nagorno-Karabakh is a mountainous region. So this mountainous region is the Caucasus Mountains, and both Armenia and Azerbaijan have their own claims on this area. However, the area's population of approximately 1.2 million, that is around 12 lakh people, is predominantly of Armenian origin. Even though the region is present in Azerbaijan, but the population living in Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Armenian region. And the people of Armenian descent who have close cultural, social and historical ties with Armenia. Then about the historical background of the region, then there has been a struggle for dominance between the regional powers in these times. So since the medieval times, the Nagorno-Karabakh region has been a conflicting stand between the Armenia and the Azerbaijan. And these regional powers included Russia, Ottoman Empire, which is Turkey, and the Persian Empire, which is Iran. So these three powers were fighting for this place. About the Soviet Union, so in 1921, when Russia under Tsarist rule transformed into the Soviet Union, so it transformed into the Soviet Union in around 1921. At that time, Nagorno-Karabakh was part of the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic. Now, the South China Sea, a topic of geography, a topic of IR, which almost every single day of the year remains in news, because there is so much happening in the South China Sea, and specifically with regard to China and Philippines. So recently the Philippines has removed the floating barrier imposed by China in a disputed area of the South China Sea. So South China Sea is a disputed area among many countries. So it is not just 1, 2 or 3 countries. There are around 8 to 9 countries between which the South China Sea is a disputed area. So China has stopped Philippines fishing boats from entering the disputed area, and this disputed area is specifically Scarborough Shoal. So China has installed floating barriers near a lagoon at Scarborough Shoal, and China claims it as its own territory, while Philippines claims it is a part of the exclusive economic zone of Philippines. So this is the South China Sea. So see, this is the South China Sea. So there is China, then there is Vietnam, there is Malaysia, Singapore, Borneo Islands, Indonesia, Taiwan, Philippines. So there are many countries which are in the disputed zone of the South China Sea. So if we will talk about the Scarborough Shoal, so this is the area where the Scarborough Shoal actually lies. Let me show you. Okay, this is Philippines, this is the Spratly Islands, this is also a disputed area. Then this is the Parasil Island, this is also a disputed area, and this is the area of Scarborough Shoal. So this is the area. China says that Scarborough Shoal area belongs to China, while Philippines says that the Scarborough Shoal area comes within the exclusive economic zone of Philippines. So Philippines has the right over it. Now background of the dispute. So the South China Sea, that is located to the south of China. China says that historically the area of the South China Sea, or the majority area of the South China Sea, which it calls the 9-dash line. So the 9-dash line is a U-shaped line, and China says and China claims that historically the area belongs to China. But as of now, other countries also says that the area comes under the exclusive economic zone of their country. So its coastal countries include Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. And there are many areas which are disputed areas, specifically being the Spratly Islands, Parasil Islands, or the Scarborough Shoal. And China considers 90% of the area as part of its exclusive economic zone, which includes archipelagos such as Parasil Islands, Spratly Islands, or the Scarborough Shoal. And China claim dispute is based on the 9-dash line, and the 9-dash line, the area of the 9-dash line belongs to China. Now the importance. So the region is one of the busiest sea routes in the world, and more than 60% of global trade passes through this region. Imagine, more than 50% of the global trade passes through this region, and the reason being that China, which is the biggest manufacturer in the world as of now, uses the South China Sea to export their items. Then about 55% of India's trade with the Indo-Pacific region happens through the South China Sea, and then there are Southeast Asian countries also involved in it, and there are other Pacific countries also involved in the passing of the trade. According to experts, there are huge reserves of crude oil, natural gas, coral, lime, high silicate, sand, high quality gems, and natural pearls in this area. And the ONGC Videsh Limited is exploring oil reserves in this area in collaboration with the Vietnam, and this is also one of the major prime fishing spots. Now let's talk about the 9-dash line. So this is China, and south of China lies the South China Sea, and this 9-dash line, so the area of the 9-dash line, China claims that belongs to China. And this is the Scarborough Shoal, this is Spratly Island, this is Parasil Islands. So 9-dash line is a U-shaped line, and it was first shown on a map by China in around 1940s, and the line represents China's so-called claim to the area of the South China Sea. And according to this, about 90% of the South China Sea belongs to China, because around 90% of the South China Sea comes under the 9-dash line of China. Next comes the Amazon River Basin, and Amazon River Basin is in news because of the recent drying up, that is because of the recent drying up or drought of the Puraquikuara Lake. Puraquikuara Lake, villages that were submerged have been affected by drought, and this lake is located in the Amazon River Basin, and Amazon River Basin is going through a problem of droughts. And the reason behind this is believed to be El Nino and the warming of the waters of the North Tropical Atlantic Ocean. El Nino year, last year was also there was effect of El Nino which was seen, and now also it could be seen. And these climate events are exacerbated by global warming and the burning of fossil fuels and also climate change. Now let's talk about the Amazon River basin. When the term basin comes, it means that the overall area where the river goes. So the overall area covered by the river is called the river basin, even the areas which are covered by its tributaries. So it is the largest water drainage basin in the world. Largest water drainage basin in the world. And it covers about 34% of the South America, and about 60% of the world's rainforest are found here. So whenever we talk about rainforest, so it is the Amazon River basin or the Amazon River which comes to our mind, and specifically when we talk about the country, then that is Brazil. 10% of the known sources of life on earth are also present here, 10%, and the countries covered are Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname and Venezuela. And the Amazon River basin, both equator and Tropic of Capricorn passes through the Amazon River basin. Then India's maiden winter Arctic expedition. So maiden winter Arctic expedition. So recently the Ministry of Earth Science has launched the first winter scientific expedition to the Arctic. Winter scientific expedition ministry is Ministry of Earth Science. And it is noteworthy that Indian scientific expeditions to both the poles of Earth, that is the Arctic and the Antarctic, are conducted under the scheme that is known as the Polar and Cryosphere Scheme. So this has been done under this scheme, that is PACER, Polar and Cryosphere Scheme. So name of the scheme becomes important and ministry becomes important. The National Center for Polar and Ocean Research is responsible for this mission. So the responsible agency is the National Center for Polar and Ocean Research. And it is an institution under the Ministry of Earth Science. IMD also comes under the Ministry of Earth Science. Since 2008, India has been operating a research base named Himadri in the Arctic. This can be asked that which research engine or which research base is present in the Arctic, that is Himadri. So be very clear between the research base between Arctic and Antarctic. And this base is located in Svalbard, Norway. So Svalbard, Norway, the base is located. And if we talk about the region of Svalbard, so the region is very close to the Arctic Ocean or the North Pole, and this Svalbard belongs to Norway. So scientists conduct research in Himadri mostly during the summer. Now other initiatives of India regarding the Arctic. So in the year 2022, the government of India released its Arctic policy, and the name of the Arctic policy was Name India and the Arctic, Building Partnership for Sustainable Development. Sustainable development means that sustainable, a development which should be for the future generations also, and it should be sustainable. In 2014, India has established a multi-sensor mode observatory which was named INDARC in the Kongsfjorden Forest of Arctic. Then in 2013, India has the status of observer in the Arctic Council. So India is not a permanent member of the Arctic Council. India has the status of observer in the Arctic Council, and the countries which are present are basically the countries which are around the Arctic Ocean, like for example there is Canada, there is US, there is Norway, there is Finland. So these are the countries. It is noteworthy that India has signed the Svalbard Treaty of 1920. Svalbard Treaty of 1920 talks about the Svalbard Islands, that Norway has its sovereignty over it. Now next comes the Kuril Islands. So if we talk about the Kuril Islands, then this also remains in news, and I hope you know the location. So Kuril Island is a disputed area between Russia and Japan. Japan being on the south and Russia being on the north. So it is between the Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia and the Hokkaido Islands of Japan, and this is the Kuril Island, lies in the Pacific Ocean. So recently a earthquake measuring 6.3 on the Richter scale was recorded in the Kuril Islands, and this archipelago extends from Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula to Japan's Hokkaido Island, and the archipelago separates the Sea of Okhotsk from the Pacific Ocean. So this is the Sea of Okhotsk and this is the Pacific Ocean, and Kuril Island separate these two. Many of its islands are geologically active. So many of the islands in the Kuril Islands are geologically active, and Russia and Japan have been claiming sovereignty over its 4 islands. And these are called Northern Territory in Japan and South Kuril in Russia. Northern Territory of Japan because it lies to the north of it, and it lies to the south of Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia. Now next is the deep sea coral reef. Deep sea coral reef. So scientists map the largest deep sea coral reef of the Atlantic coast of the US. Largest deep sea coral reef. So this underwater mapping technique enables the 3D images of the seabed to be created. So 3D images to be created. This makes it easier to map coral reefs at depths of 200 meters to 1000 meters, although sunlight does not penetrate to this depth. So because of this 3D images and underwater mapping technique, the coral reefs at the depth of around 1000 meters, they could also be mapped, and the reason to which sunlight also does not pass through. So much of the ocean floor is covered with deep sea corals rather than tropical corals. Deep sea corals because they are lying at a very deep side, and then there are tropical corals that lie at the shallow water. So there is tropical marine corals which are found at depth of around 0 to 30 meters, and to this area light is present. And then there are deep sea corals which lie at a very great depth, and they are home to tiny organisms that form the interconnected skeleton. And if we talk about the world's largest tropical coral reef, then that is Australia's Great Barrier Reef. And many a times we see the question related to coral reef, that is bleaching of coral reefs. What is the impact of climate change on coral reef? Why coral reefs are losing its color, and many more. They are grown in a variety of shapes and colors. Then they provide habitat for sharks, swordfish, shrimps, fish, etc. And corals are invertebrates. Corals are invertebrates. So corals are invertebrates that belong to a large group of colorful organisms named Cnidaria. You need to remember this, that they are invertebrates, and the group it belongs to is Cnidaria. This is the spelling. So I think this pronunciation would be Cnidaria, or I think C would be silent. Coral reefs are made up of colonies of hundreds to thousands of small single corals. So it is not that single corals you will find. So basically you will always find them in a group, or you can say in colonies. These small single corals are known as polyps, and these sea creatures have hard exoskeleton made up of calcium carbonate. Important point to remember, that the skeleton is made up of calcium carbonate. In India, coral reefs are found in Gulf of Kutch, Gulf of Mannar, Andaman and Nicobar, Lakshadweep Islands and Malvan of Maharashtra. So these are few of the regions you should remember, that Andaman and Nicobar, Gulf of Kutch, then Gulf of Mannar, Lakshadweep, these all the areas where you will be able to find the coral reefs. So these are the topics that we discussed today, and all the topics that we discussed were deep sea coral reef, then Kuril Islands, then Indian maiden winter Arctic expedition, then we discussed Amazon River Basin, then South China Sea, Nagorno-Karabakh region, Kulai volcano, Siang River, Sulina Channel, Panama Canal, solar flares, then Anthropocene epoch, Orkney Islands, Kakhovka Dam. So these were the topics that we discussed today in today's episode, and so this was it about today's episode. and we will be coming up with more topics like these in the next episode. So till then, keep writing, keep reading, and keep subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.